Now, this is a special review because it's actually two reviews in one. One of them is really short and the other is a bit more detailed, but they both have one thing in common. While I will briefly touch on narrative structure, zero story details will be shared to keep this as spoiler free as possible. So let's start with the quick and short review. Now, check out this amazingly illustrated graphic. As you can see on the left, it's how much you enjoy Breath of the Wild as it correlates to how much you will enjoy Tears of the Kingdom. And that's it. That graphic is all that you need to help you decide if you should buy this game or not. If you loved Breath of the Wild, you can end the video here. Thanks for watching. I would appreciate a like and subscribe on the way out. But believe me, let this be the final review you watch or read. You're much better off going to the game as fresh as possible. And if you hated Breath of the Wild, there is zero reason to get Tears. There's nothing here for you. I don't think you're going to enjoy it because, and this will lead to the second half of this review, it's the same game. Now, I know that sounds dismissive, but stick with me because those four words, it's the same game, kept bouncing around my head during the opening hours, and I could hear the echoes of it throughout my time with it. Tears of the Kingdom feels like Breath of the Wild, almost from a different universe. A lot of the ideas presented here, from story to locations, items, mechanics, felt like features that were left on the cutting room floor during Breath of the Wild's development. Like the team had such an explosion of ideas during the original game's production, combined with the limitations of the Wii U, that they couldn't fit it all. And instead of creating a simple expansion, Nintendo realized they had enough pieces to put together a sequel. Now, after a bit of time, though, my feelings about Tears changed to it's the same different game. It felt like a reimagining expansion of Breath of the Wild. For example, the narrative structure from the perspective of the objectives needed to peel away at the main story's layers felt almost identical to the first. Like, sure, the details were different, but I wish more risk was taken in this regard. It felt like a house stripped down to its frame and replaced with newer material. That rigid structure being the same diminished the impact of this narrative a bit for me. And after playing through Breath of the Wild a few years ago, my number one request for a DLC was to make Zelda playable. And what's interesting about the sequel story is that it would have served as the perfect moment to allow that. It would have made for an amazing dynamic to the narrative. I really wish Nintendo would have gone all in. Now, one thing I did like was you come across these other side missions that at first feel disconnected from the main story, but you quickly realize they run almost parallel and exist as a way to further expand the lore, and they fit right next to the silly side missions that serve the purpose of further rooting you into the world, like finding a truffle to wake up an innkeeper sleeping on an important artifact. The deja vu, but we changed it a bit feeling kept happening for me, from picking up the same items, seeing some of the same enemies, picking up a rock and finding a Korok, regardless of a new mechanic added where you have to bring one Korok to another to gain 2 seeds. I felt like I was getting ripped off. I kept saying, this is the same game. Then I came across Hestu, who once again told me he needed the seeds for his maracas and he would reward me with, surprise, surprise, expanding my inventory. Then I came across the shrines, which operated in a similar fashion. I said, what is going on? This is the same game. Sure, there were some new characters, new side missions, new enemies, but so much of it felt too familiar, but it didn't matter because Breath of the Wild was this amazing slice of cake and Tears of the Kingdom is that same slice of cake with ice cream and sprinkles on top. That cake is still delicious, and as time went on, I stopped caring. The side missions felt more interesting, combat was more challenging, enemies felt more aggressive, and the abilities in this game that replaced the originals blow the others out of the water. Stasis and the gang are now gone. In their place are Rewind, Ascend, Ultra Hand, and Fuse. Ascend is the most limited of the four since it's very location dependent. You use it to literally ascend to another level within the game. And one of my favorite uses of it was getting out of places you descended underground, such as caves, which are one of the newest additions to Hyrule that further expand the idea of exploration. The other 3 abilities set the stage for Tears of the Kingdom. They're the reason why you and I will be playing completely different games, and they offer what feels like limitless freedom. A virtual world was crafted and created, but tools are given to me that allow me to create my own rules, complete objectives, and solve puzzles my way at my own pace in the order I pick. Rewind works just as its namesake implies. If an item moves, you can backtrack its motion for about 20 seconds. It comes in handy throughout. You can use it to rewind an item an enemy has thrown at you to return it to sender, and I've used it many times when a vehicle such as a minecart started moving away from me, and it's a primary way to get to Sky Islands. You use it to rewind rocks you come across that have fallen down to Hyrule. Ultra Hand is basically the Swiss Army knife amongst the abilities. It replaces Breath of the Wild's Magnesis, as it can pick up almost any object in the game and bring it towards you or drop it on an enemy. But its main component is its ability to attach items to one another, and it opens up what feels like unlimited applications. You can attach logs to one another, put a fan on the back for a makeshift boat, or attach wheels to a wooden board and put together a vehicle, and they get more elaborate as the game opens up. In the Sky Islands, you come across these giant gacha vending machines, and once you insert specific Zonai resources that you collect throughout the world, it dispenses items you can carry and use throughout the game. Some are simple, like a one-time use cooking pot, which came in handy when I found myself in a freezing cold area where I needed to cook the right foods to stay alive. But it also dispenses parts you can carry with you, such as rockets to propel creations, wheels to make vehicles, fans to propel them, and so many more that I don't want to spoil here. You do have a limited battery, so you can't run these items forever, but it can be expanded, and later on you come across separate batteries you can attach to a creation to help it run longer. Ultra Hand and Rewind combined to provide you tools to solve some of the most creative puzzles in Zelda history. Because in gaming, finally finding the solution to a puzzle that had you scratching your head always ends in elation, that aha moment that precedes satisfaction. But nothing will beat the feeling that you get from solving a puzzle using a solution that you yourself crafted instead of discovering the one way that developers programmed the puzzle to be solved. The Shrines in the sequel took the blueprint created by Breath of the Wild and accelerated that idea tenfold. Tools are given to you, but it rarely felt like there was a single way to get to the end. One of my favorite examples was a shrine where you had to cross a pit of lava, and the main item given to you was a hydrant. You spray water, the lava hardens, creating a platform. After crossing that first river, I noticed a chest to my left that sat across another small pool of lava, but it was elevated. And instead of making new platforms, I recycled what I just made. I used Ultra Hand to grab them and stack them to create a platform for me to reach the chest. The final puzzle was crossing a river of lava that was flowing away from the exit, and 2 hydrants were given to me, but I instead decided to recycle again, breaking down the stack to build a small bridge, placing it at the end of the river where the current moved towards me, jumped on it, rewound it, and made it to the exit on the other side. Every shrine felt satisfying in a similar manner, and I regularly said, I don't know if this was the right way to do it, but I solved it, and that's the magic of this game. If you made it, no matter how you made it, that's the right way. Now, one of the best applications for these new abilities are the return of dungeons, which took a break with Breath of the Wild and were replaced by the disappointing Divine Beast. These new dungeons each have their own theme and systems attached that match their respective elements, and I couldn't have been happier with them. It was my number one gripe with Breath of the Wild. I loved shrines, but I sorely missed the elaborate structures that were dungeons, and they each intricately inhabit their surroundings, and even reaching them is a puzzling challenge, with one involving the sky that I don't want to spoil, but was one of my favorite sequences, honestly, in recent gaming history. Now, Fuse is the last of the new abilities, and it's an evolution of the game's weapon system. You can use it to attach almost any item you find on the ground to either a weapon or your shield in order to enhance its durability. So you can attach a spear to another spear to make a really long one, or attach a rock to a sword for the perfect weapon to break large boulders. One of my favorites was attaching a 20 damage cursed bokoblin arm to another for a 40-point damage weapon. It also feels very limitless, and it all adds to some really interesting interactions, especially with the shield. Attached spikes so you can quickly pop choo-choos that jump into it. One of my favorites was attaching a hydrant to the shield and coming across a fire pebblet. It quickly extinguished it and hardened it for a quick kill. The same can be done for arrows. Attaching Keith's eyeballs turns it into a homing arrow. Attach an ice flower to quickly get rid of a fire wizrobe. Attach a muddlebud flower to confuse enemies and cause them to attack each other, or have fun at the funny sound it makes when hitting someone with an apple arrow. A lot of the items you can attach don't seem to serve a concrete purpose outside of experimentation and laughs, but I kind of love that. I love the freedom baked into the feature. There is a 5th ability that doesn't exist in Breath of the Wild, but it's sort of an enhancement of another ability. And I think that's best left as a happy surprise. Now, let's quickly talk about performance. The dev team extracted what feels like every last ounce of what the Nintendo Switch is capable of for this game. It's like, you remember after drinking a Capri Sun, you would squeeze it and suck all the air out of that pouch? That's a Nintendo Switch running Tears of the Kingdom. There were a few times when I experienced slowdowns during combat with a few enemies, but for the most part, it ran at what felt like a solid 30 frames. I experienced the game undocked for an hour here or there to try it out, but the bulk of my time was spent playing on a monitor with a Pro Controller in hand, and it's amazing how much they were able to get out of this aging hardware. Draw distance is pretty solid, with some understandable pop-in, and no load times are needed when dropping from the sky down to Hyrule and vice versa. It miraculously works as it should, and it looks great, but the entire time I was playing the game, I couldn't help but imagine what that team could accomplish with better hardware. Now, the game isn't without its gripes, and a lot of them are about the lack of evolution in the gameplay systems and controls themselves. Like, the cooking system returns, but I wish it was a more dedicated mode instead of having to scroll through dozens of items to gather the ones I want, put them on my hand, and toss them in a pot. Still very slow. The game now remembers recipes you've made, but I wish there was a smart system, a recipe page that showed me what I could create based on the ingredients I had, and then prepared them for me in one click. Other mechanics just felt clumsy by design. Horses can now be attached with a harness to tow large objects like wagons, but you can only get them from a stable, and once it provides its use, you have to return to the stable to remove it. It's like Link can carry 13 weapons, 5 shields, and 100 ingredients, but a horse harness would be too much. Weapon and item swapping is another chore, especially as you expand your inventory through Hestu. Having to scroll left to right through a list to find the weapon to do the job is clumsy, and I wish there was a simple weapon wheel that automatically contained my top weapons. Same goes for arrow attachments, where while fun, is not very fun when you're looking for a particular item among dozens of options that do nothing. Luckily, you can sort them by most used, which came in handy. And also, Nintendo, you got to join us in the year 2023 with better control options. Why can't I do something as simple as control my camera speed to the number rather than having to choose between medium and fast? And I need to be able to separately control my aiming and camera speeds. This is basic stuff that should be in there. Now, The Legend of Zelda's legacy was inspired by Shigeru Miyamoto's childhood and his local exploration in Japan, coming across lakes, through forests and caves. And as technology has advanced, so has the realization of that original idea. And Breath of the Wild got the closest, but Tears of the Kingdom has leapfrogged it because this game truly felt like an adventure unraveled via exploration and not just following markers on a map. And the design philosophy behind the exploration is one of consistent reward. It feels like your curiosity is always rewarded in this game to further encourage you to take a look around. It's a fascinating open-ended loop that the team has created. This isn't a game you rush through. It's one where you originally plot a point to get to, but never reach it via a straight line. You defeat an enemy attacking a traveler, discover a cave and its secrets, exit to find a falling rock that you rewind to discover a puzzle in the sky, jump off and come across an enemy you've never seen, standing next to a giant hole that piques your curiosity just enough to leap into it. This $70 game put so many others to shame because they feel expensive while this one feels expansive. Without going into detail, there's an area to explore that seems to be the same size as Hyrule, so you'll be playing for quite some time. This game's biggest strength is its ability to fully realize an adventure through moment-to-moment gameplay, and the greatest adventures are ones we navigate ourselves, filled with discovery and danger, overcoming obstacles through solutions we ourselves built by hand. It truly feels like a vision fully realized, a proper sandbox to build your story and share it with others, and Nintendo has once again proven lightning can strike in the same place twice. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on the game. Like and subscribe to help the channel, and thank you so much for watching.